I mean, he says it in Nintendo 64. It's me, Mario.
Mario. Yeah, I don't know.
Well,
It's always been Mario. It's always been Mario's.
Before he could talk.
Yeah.
That was his first word. I'm just going to stand here and let Carrie make a face because he always makes a face when we start, and it's so distracting to me. And that's the intro to the show. Welcome back to the Nerd Nest podcast, everybody. We are a man down this week, but I'm sure he'll be back next week. Rich had some other dad stuff to do, but we've got a lot to talk about today, and I want us to start off by talking about one of the coolest things that Valve does, and that is that they let us know ahead of time when they're going to be having sales. And I'm not just saying, hey, there's a sale next week. Like, we have all of the different sales that are coming for the whole year that Valve posted. I don't know how long they've been telling us this ahead of time. I haven't been paying close enough attention to it for sure. But they, like, all of their sales tend to have like themes to them. And so if you are in the, if you're in the market for like a sports game, maybe you want to wait because it's going to be on, like, there's going to be a bunch of sports games that are on sale later on in the year. So I thought that real quick, we would look at the first half of 2025 and the sales that are coming up. We just had the Real-Time Strategy Fest, which had a bunch of real-time strategy games that were on sale, as well as some demos. I love the Steam Fest demos. And then we had the Idler Fest, which I completely missed. Not a big deal because I don't really play those games. That was from February 3rd to 10th and currently running, actually, by the time you see this, it might be over, is the Couch Co-op Fest, which is February 10th to 17th. But then we have a bunch that are coming out for the rest of the year. And I'm going to leave a link down below so that people can check out all of the upcoming sales. But Carrie, I was curious, like, of the upcoming sales for just the first half of the year, which one speaks to you the most that you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to hold off on buying stuff until that sale comes? Anything?
So the only thing that I have that is coming down the wire that I am 100% going to wait for, and this is something I tweeted about before, and that is Stellar Blade. It may not be in this list, but Stellar Blade is coming to PC. It was in the State of Play for PlayStation. Mm-hmm. And Stellar Blade is a game that I just don't really have much interest in, like on like face value alone. Everything that people have shown off to me is stuff that I don't care about. It's like, look at her go up a ladder. And then I'm like, all right. So that is one game that a lot of people have said is very good. They put it in like a Bayonetta, Nier Automata type of tier for like an action game. And those are fun action games. So it's around that genre. So I'm like, okay, but that's a game that I'm firmly going to wait on a sale, a good sale, before I pick up. And I think that's what I would myself personally nominate, even if it's not on this list, but that is like a high profile one that I'm for sure going to wait on a sale and then pick up.
Yeah. Russ, what are there any sales that you're waiting for? And do you think that this list of sales that we have upcoming this year, that the game might be sitting in there waiting for you?
The themed ones don't really appeal to me too much just because they're like genres that I usually don't check out, right? But you never know, right? So like the Visual Novel Fest coming out next month, like, I don't know, I could play a good visual novel. I've only played like the one that turns into a horror game. I forgot what that one's called, Doki Doki something or other.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and so like I don't see myself, like I don't have a lot of like zombies versus vampires fest like interest, you know what I mean? But you never know. The big thing for me would obviously just be like the Steam Spring Sale, which we now know is March 13th to 20th. And so like I immediately know that a game like Stellar Blade might show up there. Like that's usually what I do is I got my wish list going, and then when the sale pops up, I will just go to that wish list and be like, all right, which one's finally hitting that tier for me, you know? So that's kind of the thing I'm looking at is like what each of those spring like and summer sales, like those are big ones for me. But the theme ones, it's a little bit harder just because, I don't know, like I don't have interest in fishing games, but there is a fishing fest in June.
Right, exactly. I think that for me, the one that jumps out to me is probably Automation Fest. I've been kind of eyeballing Shapes with a Z is how it's spelled. There's two of them. There's Shapes and then Shapes 2. I just came out in 2024. And that's like the theme of the game is you have like these machines that you're building in order to, I don't know, make like doodads or sprockets or something, some ridiculous thing that you're trying to manufacture. And you want to try and manufacture as many as you can, as fast as you can. And that's like the kind of thing that would be in Automation Fest, which is July 14th to July 21st. But, you know, Russ, you're absolutely right. We've got the spring sale, which is coming in less than a month. So, I'm going to try not to buy any games for the next month. And that shouldn't be too hard because I've got a massive RPG that I just started playing yesterday that we'll talk about in a little bit. But I'm really looking forward to in a month, and I'm going to start shopping now and going through and adding games to my wish list so that I will get those little notifications, and then I'll have to make that decision. Oh, the game on your wish list, like I get those messages all the time. The game on your wish list is now on sale. And I have to, do I want to pull the trigger now or do I want to wait because it's going to go on sale again later? But we can't, like, the best advantage that Steam has over every other platform out there is that the games are constantly on sale. So yeah, you might spend some extra money building a computer, but you're going to save a bunch of money buying the games.
Along these same lines of what is really fantastic about this themed thing that they've been like kind of digging into a lot lately, the Steam Next Fest, they've really been banging on all cylinders. They've always had Steam's spring sale, summer sale, Halloween sale, Thanksgiving sale. Those are like the big ones, right? And Thanksgiving and Christmas are always the biggest ones. That's when everyone would go nuts and the site would go down historically. And then, we started getting more and more. Steam Next Fest started coming around, and that has been a fantastic portal to see newer games that are coming out. But what I really love about this now themed section, like fishing, I don't really care about too much. But when you frame what Valve is doing with these very singular categories as, look at these games, not only are these games of a specific genre that you may be interested, but they are for sure on sale to even further pique your interest. So it narrows down and like uber niches down to what you're looking for. And I've heard a lot of people complaining about like the eShop store is like a top complaint out of all like online stores. And apparently, Nintendo, they don't really do infrastructure very well. And apparently what they do is when you become a publisher, a game publisher on Nintendo side, after the initial verification, Nintendo no longer checks anything else that you're doing. So you can just start pumping shovelware into the eShop nonstop. And then they also game it by naming a title, something, and doing like some extreme discount, making the game like worth 50 cents, and then making another shovelware game a similar name so that they just occupy the top spot all the time. And Nintendo's not doing anything about it. So the eShop is just a mess of stuff you can't find. And PSN Store, you had Jonathan Blow complain when he had his remastered Braid game come out. And he was like, look, I'm on the PSN Store. I'm going down and down and down. My game just launched and I can't find it. It's not even showing up. So PlayStation does the opposite thing. They're just like, yeah, you can totally put shovelware up there, but we're only going to show off Ubisoft, EA, Bethesda. That's all we're actually going to show. We're not going to show any indie games. You can put it there, but good luck. And I feel like Valve has done a far better job having the cream come to the top. And now this is yet another stage of pushing to help indie developers actually get sales. So, and this is why we find Steam to be the premier PC platform for buying games. And they were already dominant, and they're going to be even more dominant. So, good job, Valve.
I think that also pre-announcing all of these genres also really help with the developers too, because they're like, all right, my fishing game might be part of Fishing Fest, and so let me pump out that update. Let me get the community around it or whatever, or talk to Val. Like, there's just a lot of good that comes from pre-announcing something like that. And then I agree with you too, Carrie. It's like, I don't think about fishing games, but during that week, I probably will. Like, I'll actually think about fishing games because they're going to show up and I'm going to be like, oh, let me check out this thing. It's like a new discovery mechanism for us to kind of find out the other worlds that are out there, all these like subgenres and stuff. And so I think it's, just a good move overall.
Yeah.
Not only that, but like, you say, I don't think about fishing games. And I am also somebody who, like, when we started this conversation 9 minutes ago, I thought to myself, these are genres that I don't care about. But if suddenly there's like Valve is saying, hey, look at this, I might take a look at that. And there might be a game that is, say, fishing themed that might actually appeal to me. Like there's this, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. And if you remember, let us know in the comments down below. But there's this roguelike fishing game where like you go around and you try and you catch these fish, and then it like redoes the world each time. And when I saw that over, like I was scrolling through, I follow a bunch of indie devs over on Blue Sky, and I was scrolling through and I saw that and I was like, oh, that game looks really cool. I would not go looking for fishing games, but this might force me to look for fishing games.
Yeah.
Right.
Would you classify Dave the Diver as a fishing game? That's probably the closest I've ever been to recently. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know.
I still think it qualifies. It's like adjacent to fishing, right? So as long as it's still in that subgenre, we've talked about this before, and I always mention it. Final Lap Twin as a game that I always bring up, just because it's so unique to me, and it's a racing RPG. And there has been a fishing RPG on Game Boy as well. So I want to play that game, and I would love for there just to be a fishing RPG or something. Like I would just like a genre mashup of fishing plus whatever, and a fishing roguelike even sounds interesting to me on face value alone. So yeah, I feel like along your points, like Russ, like what you're saying is, I think collectively all of us would not be looking for a fishing game. But when we go to the Steam store and say, oh, fishing thing, we're just going to click that banner, and then it's going to show us the cream of what that has to offer. And then we're going to be presented options that literally no other gaming store is presenting. So I think it's a win for developers. I think it's a win for players, because especially with we're getting all burnt out on gas-heavy games that no one wants to play, and they're only playing the select few. And we're just getting remakes upon remasters of things that are easy and conservative that they can, just pump out again and just, fish a few more dollars. So it's just, I don't know. For me, I've always been a big proponent of indie games. So this, not saying that this is going to be indie-led driven, but I would wager that we're going to see a fair share of very unique indie games in these categories. So I'm looking forward to it.
By the way, I found the name of that roguelike fishing game is called Lake of Creatures. And it actually looks pretty cool, and it's on sale for 32% off right now. You can get it for $8.50. And I can hear Carrie trying to find it right now.
Yeah, so is Russ. Yeah, well, both of us are.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I wonder if
this looks cool.
what the fishing sale was going to be like.
This looks awesome. Like this is something that I would totally just be like, okay, yeah, that's fine.
It says similar to games I've played, and it says Hades and Balatro. It's like perfect.
Yeah, you got my number.
Speaking of which, one sale that just came out this week was Ninja Turtles Splinter of Fate or whatever, which is basically Hades, but in the TMNT world. And so I finally picked it up because it was on sale, a good price. And I don't really like it. It's really slow. Like the mechanics are slow. I'm used to like fast, hitting my buttons and all that kind of stuff. It's just too many pauses for me. So I don't like it.
One thing that also is a positive for Valve is knowing that you can easily refund the game if it just doesn't gel with you. Like there is always that option where it's just like, oh, let me just click 3 buttons and then I'll get a refund in like an hour or so. It's never really been a problem for me. I know that there are some outliers for people that treat it like a full-on demo service. And then, and Valve is just like, we're actually not going to refund this. And they're like, I can't believe you're not refunding this. But so there's that. So like I'm going to take a brief digression. Golf Story. Did any of you guys play it when it came out for Switch?
Yeah.
Golf Story. Remind me.
Yep.
So Golf Story it's a 2D golfing game.
Oh, yes.
And I saw Golf Story, and it's like you go to different levels that are all themes. You go to desert level, and you get like golf clubs and stuff. And I'm like, oh, sweet, a golfing RPG. And then I play it, and it's not a golfing RPG by any stretch of the imagination.
Let me ask real quick. Is that the one where you're trying to like save the golf, like the place where you go to golf because it's going to get closed down or something?
I only played the first 2 levels. I don't even remember the story.
Okay.
I know that you're in a club and something happens and then you go to like another thing. But the game is just it's a hardcore golf game. Like you have to be very, like it's like you're, swinging with accuracy, trying to guide the ball with accuracy. It's like more heavy on the simulation side than a story side. And it's like, that was one thing that I had whiplash. And if I bought it on Steam, I could have refunded it, but because I bought a Nintendo, I was like, well, I own this now, so I'll just have it. So that was one game that I loved the on face value. I was like, okay, I'm in. And then when I started playing it, I'm like, my expectations were just in a different realm. And that's on me, but also make it like golf simulator.
You're right. They put the word story in it,
Yeah.
right?
I feel like I could be wrong, but I think that you're talking about a different game than Golf Story, because I'm gonna drop a link to Golf Story in our.
That's it.
Really?
Yeah, that's it.
Because I played Golf Story and it's not a hardcore sim. It is it's an RPG.
All right, so I only went 2 levels in, and I didn't get any levels or stat increases. I think I don't even remember even getting a different club.
I don't remember. It's been a long time since I played that game.
It's one of my test games on Switch. By the way, it's $2.84 right now on sale on the eShop store. So if anyone wants to pick it up, it's $15 usually.
Yeah, I paid for. Yeah, it wasn't like it was crazy, but that game I was expecting more levels. Like you're level 2, you're level 3, and like I expected a game where my attributes would increase and make the game easier because I'm leveling up, and then I would have to go to like harder courses to play that course. And it was more fanciful and not RPG-ish. At least as far as I got it. I could be totally wrong. I only played the first 2 levels and I was like, this isn't for me. I remember just like hitting the ball and like being like oh, I gotta like lean into where this is going.
Yeah, I do like golf games, and I did pick this one up, and I use it as a test game, but I haven't gotten far in it either. I just usually see if it works with the first, swing. I'm like, okay, it seems to be working okay so far.
Solved.
Well, Carrie, you brought up something interesting earlier, talking about like just shovelware on the eShop, and Sony has been delisting games that they are considering shovelware. We got this posted over up at Eurogamer. And basically, they've got some low-quality games have been deleted from the PlayStation Store. And basically, this is because I guess there was an investigation by IGN that found differing approaches to quality control across Nintendo, PC, PlayStation, and Xbox stores. And then it says players believe they found evidence that Sony's removed some questionable developers from the PlayStation stores. So here's my question to you guys, and I'll start with Russ. Do you like the idea where anybody can publish any game to a platform, or would you prefer that the platform holders are a little more strict about what gets posted to their stores to try and make it easier for customers to find the diamonds in the rough by reducing the amount of rough? Does that make sense, Russ?
Yeah, I feel like in general, just allowing games into the store is probably fine. Like I want it to be a free market in that regard, unless it's something explicitly like, not meeting their terms of service or whatever. Like I get all that, nudity or whatever. But yeah, I think it should be a free for all. And then they have some sort of curating service that really kind of lets the cream rise to the top, be that reviews or word of mouth or whatever, as opposed to slop, Right. It's hard because like I'm thinking about the Apple App Store, the iOS App Store, like they do kind of, screen a lot of the apps as they come in and whatnot. But they can be really heavy-handed with that, like the Provenance emulator app, which is one on I've been following on Twitter for a long time. I used to use that on my iPad, like sideloading it. It took them like a year to actually get approved for the most mundane things, right? Because their barrier process was just so involved, and so yeah, that was kind of crappy. Like, so I want stuff to get there, but I also want a human to at least kind of take a look or make some sort of algorithm or something that kind of helps with it. So yeah, I'm more free market, I think, in that regard.
I'm with you. The one advantage that Steam has, and I could be wrong about the other stores because I don't go into the other stores very often, but I don't think, like on Switch, you can't review games. On PlayStation, I don't know if you can review games. On Xbox, I'm not sure. Can you review games on the other platforms? Do you guys know?
You can give them stars, I think.
Yeah, you give them stars, yeah. But it's
is that surfaced to the players so that to the people who are looking at the store, and then you're like, oh, this game on PlayStation only got 3 stars, or can you not see that? Because I can't remember.
Yeah, no, you definitely can.
You can see it.
Yeah, it's there. I don't think
who
it
looks
matters.
at that? Right.
Yeah, like, I mean, people could like, oh, this is only 1 star and make a decision on it, but it doesn't influence the store algorithm in terms of if you see it or not.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to, like, what do you think about PlayStation nuking a bunch of shovelware?
So,
Carrie?
Yeah, so PlayStation also has the same problem as Nintendo does, is that once they verified a publisher, that publisher can then slop away. Just put on the slop and they just keep on letting it come. But PlayStation tunes their store to not really show indie games. And Nintendo doesn't. They just make it like the Wild West. And then the indie devs have learned how to game the system through and through so that they can always have their stuff top billing and just basically bilking people for garbage. And I don't know what Nintendo's doing about that. Steam is also the same way, is that you can be a developer and start putting your stuff in, but their algorithm and all of their other utilities that they do is what is surfacing all the good stuff to the top, and all the crap exists on there, but generally you don't see it. So you have these... Yeah,
I was going to say that, like for PlayStation, if like I'm reading this article, this developer Random Spin puts out like dozens of games a year or whatever, and it's crap. You don't have to necessarily remove them, just Jonathan blow them. You know what I mean? Just like put them below so that people can't find them. There must be some checkbox where they're like, all right, make it hard to find this game because it's crap. Something like that would be good.
It's really just like highlighting like infrastructure problems that Nintendo and Sony have. They just don't do infrastructure very well. And so Xbox actually does vet every game. And I don't think that that's a good move either. That's like the Apple way. So they are actually vetting stuff and letting only certain things on. But at the same token, for every type of app that is, or game that comes on there, it has all of the requirements. So Xbox Series X, Xbox Series S, Xbox One, what is it working on? Then it has to go through this whole certification process. And then there's like terms in there. For instance, on the Xbox 360, this is what started it. And it was actually worse on the 360 generation. But I don't know if you guys ever played Fez. Yeah, so Fez, there was one patch that the guy made. They pushed it to it. But in the 360 generation, the first patch was free. If you do another patch, the developer had to pay for it to go onto the platform.
That's ridiculous.
So he never pushed it. They had one patch and that was it. And the PC version got fixed, but the 360 version remained broken in that specific way. So that's the type of thing that Microsoft does. Because they are certifying every game, they start loading it with costs to the developer. So now it becomes less attractive from that angle as well, which I don't think helps Microsoft in any way by having all these restrictions. They could claim that, it's a cleaner store, but doing all this stuff and creating barriers via money as a tax to prevent people from just trying to slop it on there, just aiming patches one at a time, trying to bullseye patches instead of doing these long laundry list of patches to try to actually get it to a good playable state. The whole new way of making games is, here it is as early access, we'll just get to keep on updating it. And Valve is really only one in the better position from how long they've been doing things to, number one, deliver patches far faster, do a better job of trying to scan them. But even Valve messed up. There was that they found one game that was live for a brief period that was filled with malware. And now they're recommending anyone that installed it. They sent a banner to them, said, hey, you've installed this game and played it, and we found that there was malware on it. We've deleted it, but you should probably nuke your PC and start over. So this whole approach is, especially on a PC where it is open, is a bit scary. And Valve does a lot of work, and you don't really hear this too often, which means that this developer really did some insidious stuff to get this malware through. But like that's, a a thing that Valve has as an extra problem, whereas closed systems, they don't really have that issue so much. So yeah, it's I still think the open platform is the best way, and the only shining example of doing it correctly is what Valve does. Especially with these sales that we're talking about now, and this is just the next step of what they were doing. So what's his name? Lars Doucet. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I apologize, but he made Fortress of Doors. Fortress of Doors is his website, and he made a tower defense game, and he's making the part 2 to it. But he was actually a consultant for Valve. This is when Steam Labs came out, like 3 or 4 years ago. And Steam Labs was the whole system about trying to make their Steam Store algorithm better. And that has been paying dividends since then. So it's just been getting better and better, and they keep on refining it. Yeah, you see Casey showing up. So they have a bigger presence with PR now. So there's like a PR person that is like doing stuff. And it feels a lot more friendlier than Valve used to feel. It feels like a black box and a cold wall of like, here's the stuff, figure it out. And now it's becoming more personable and approachable and themed, and it's a lot nicer. So yeah, I feel like, well, man, it took 20 years for Steam to get to this point. And so it's not like Valve just flipped a switch and figured it out.
Right.
It's been a long time coming. So I feel for every provider that does this type of stuff. But yeah, like even like Sony was down for over a day. Right. And that, they were down for over a week a few years ago.
Let's talk about that that real quick, because I didn't add that into the show notes, but I freaking should have, because it really showed a huge issue with Sony's disk drives. Because if you bought like, I have a PS5, and the PS5, the one that I have, is one that came with the disk drive, right? But then the PS5 Slim came out, which does not have a disk drive, but you can buy a disk drive added onto it. And then the same thing with the PS5 Pro. And when that was announced, it was shown that you had to pair your disk drive to your PS5 Slim or your PS5 Pro. And my initial reaction to that was, that's friggin' stupid, because something's going to happen to somebody's PS5, and now we have e-waste. But that's so much smaller of a problem than what actually happened, because PSN was down for 24 hours, and somebody was like, I wonder what happens if you try during PSN, when PSN is down, if you try and pair your disk drive to your PS5, you couldn't do it. So if we fast forward 10 years from now, and Sony decides, you know what, we don't need that server that authenticates PS5 disk drives to PS5s anymore. Yeah. Not only are you going to lose your digital games, but you'll also lose your physical games. The thing that I have to admit, I don't really do physical games very much, but I know a lot of people do, and I want them to exist for those people. But the people who've constantly been like, I only buy physical games because physical games mean that I will always have access to it. Well, not anymore. They showed us that you do not have access to that. What do you think about that, Russ?
It's crazy. I think about the Super Nintendo. What if you're like, oh yeah, you won't be able to play your own games on a Super Nintendo? Like, it's crazy. Like, to even just have that barrier in the first place. It's a short-term solution and making a long-term problem, basically.
But what do you think the solution that they were what exactly problem were they trying to solve by making you pair your disk drive to your console?
Oh, I have no idea.
So the only thing that I could think of would be the same. So I don't know if you guys were in the pirating scene for the 360 when it initially started. The main avenue for pirating 360 games was not hacking the system at all, but hacking the disk drive. So if you hack the firmware of the disk drive, you can play copied games, and you didn't touch anything on the system itself, but you were just telling the firmware that, it passed, go on, send it through. Okay. And so that's the only thing that I could think of, is that people could tamper with drives. So there's some key exchange on the drives that they're selling. I could see a security reason of why they're doing that, to a degree, but I'm sure there's a lot of different types of IDs on the discs themselves So who knows if it's really necessary? But yeah, it does become a general issue in the event that there are unsold disk drives that once this server gets turned off eventually, that does this pairing mechanism, all of those disk drives are e-waste. Unless there's someone that creates a pirate server that will authenticate disk drives on consoles, which maybe
it's not just that they're e-waste. The games can no longer be played on that particular PS5.
Yes, yeah.
The games that you paid for.
The irony is that people buy physical so that they can future-proof these devices, right? But it's a huge vulnerability. And yeah, Carrie, I agree. It's probably some sort of like handshake thing to make sure you're not spoofing like the wrong drive or whatever.
Right. I can at least say, okay, I can understand why they're doing that. But this is really the whole, like, this entire thing is, so perhaps, this is me, totally going the conspiracy theory person like I normally do, is you can see that Sony is boiling the frog in the pot, right? They're making sure that they don't get the water too hot for the frog to jump out before it's fully cooked. And they're doing that in two ways, right? They are trying to transition over to a digital-only ecosystem. And how do they do that? Well, they start removing the disk drive from the system, but you could always just pay more to get the disk drive on there, which then becomes a tax and a barrier that eventually this becomes a landslide where people aren't going to pay for that. They're just going to buy the digital game, which costs the same amount, and it's convenient. So they're just going to do that, right? You can see them, via taxes and fees guiding behavior of people. Mm-hmm. And then, you also look at the PC releases of Sony games, and it initially started out at 2 years, and then it was 2 years and change, and then it was 16 months, and then it was 14 months, and then it was 12 months. And you can see that this sliding scale of when this stuff releases is shorter. And what's his name? There was a CEO from Corsair Gaming. He basically just said out loud, who knows if he's telling the truth or not, but he said, the Grand Theft Auto 6 is coming out on PC early 2026, which means that instead of there being a year and change gap between console and PC release, it's likely going to be 4 to 6 months. So that's even shorter now. So I don't know, you see all these different things of where they're trying to guide behavior, but then they're also still trying to maximize how much money they can make out of things. And it's interesting to see the behavioral analysis type of stuff of what they're doing. But all these companies are just trying to make more money. Which consoles, I
don't blame them. I mean, I don't blame them for trying to make more money. But every time they try and do something to stop people from pirating, the only people that they actually hurt are the paying customers.
Yeah.
The people who are pirating games, they're still going to find a way to steal these games. They will always find a way. They're never going to stop piracy. All they're doing is making the people who actually pay them have a harder time playing their games. And that's been the same. I've been saying this same thing for 20 years at this point. Every time that somebody puts up some stupid anti-piracy measure, it just hurts the paying customers.
I'm thinking about this and like trying to envision, say, 5-10 years from now when they want to turn off this disk drive server, and Sony, if you're listening, if you want to be the good guy, and they probably are watching this, right?
Of course.
I'm kidding.
Hey, Hiroki.
What they could do is do a system update for the PS5 that basically removes the requirement for the handshake.
Right.
And they'd be like, hey, here's our kiss out the door. We're going to end service for this. But hey, here you go. Here you can now use your discs no matter what. Something like that would be really cool.
Harry, give me a what % chance do you think that happens? Russ's little idea. What's your % chance that happens?
0.
Well, that's not fun. I was going to have Russ do an over/under.
No, yeah. I mean, so it's like the same thing with like when you see MMOs. Remember MMOs in the early aughts that was the basic reason that you would play PC games. It's like Warcraft and EverQuest were out, and everyone was like, "Oh, that's a money train. Let me get on that money train." And so many MMOs failed. And when they failed and crashed and burned, they didn't say, "Okay, here's the server. You can install and have fun with it." They just said, "Okay, you can't play it anymore." and then walked away.
We're taking our
Although
toys.
EQ did approve EverQuest EQ 99, or Project 99, so you can use Project 99 and play the original EverQuest without any of that. Same thing happened with City of Heroes. At first they got shut off, but then they came back and said, okay, you guys can do it now, because they listened to the community, which is awesome. But you also, I mean, you have the other ones that never came back, like Asheron's Call 2, which was a horrendous failure. But when I played it, I was like, oh man, this is really cool. And then it's just gone, and nobody will ever get to play that again. And as somebody who takes video game preservation very seriously, that's terrible and shouldn't happen. There should be some way that you can at least explore the world that existed at that time, even if you can't interact with other people.
Yeah. Your best bet is basically people reverse engineering and making emulated servers from what they can figure out.
I mean, people still play Phantasy Star Online. Like that's the thing.
Right. Oh yeah, they someone reverse engineered Xbox Live, the original Xbox Live.
Right.
So like there are people that if there's enough interest that they're like just crack their knuckles and like, okay, let's do this. But it's unfortunate, right? Like that it has to come to that. There are some things. It's funny enough. So one of the first MMOs I ever played was called The Realm, made by Sierra, who I love Sierra games. So this is 94, 95. And one of the first MMOs to exist, and there's a private emulated server for that. And I actually have my hand on it, and it's there's like 300 people in the world that play on these things. Like literally, there's only like 300 of us left. But once I found it, I was like, oh my goodness, there's a way I can still play this game. So that that's awesome. I don't know. Yeah, it's a tough spot. I really wish that game preservation was taken far more seriously than it is, and I don't know.
Listen, there's a game that my wife and I played years ago when we didn't live together at the time, but we used to play this game called Funeral Quest, and it was an online game where you played through the browser and you ran a funeral home. And you had to like customers would come in and you would have to like convince them to come to your funeral home. But then at night you could go and steal from the other funeral. It was really freaking weird. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because if anybody out there can find, because I've looked millions of times, dozens of times. If anybody out there can find a working Funeral Quest server, leave a comment down below. Because my wife will go nuts for it. We had so much fun playing that game, stealing from other people at night, and then trying to convince, you got to upsell this lady as she comes in to bury her husband. Listen, you don't want to bury him in a pine box. You got to get the mahogany or something. You know what I mean? It was really, really a fun game.
The good news, Bill, is that the person that made that game listens to this podcast, so he'll hook you up.
Right. Of course they do. Hello, Funeral Quest person.
He works at Sony now.
That's right. It's Hiroki Totoki. Who would have thought? All right. Listen, we've got a lot of other news stories to talk about, but let's take a break and talk about the games that we've been playing. I'm going to start off with Indiana Jones. I finished it yesterday. I never agree with Carrie on almost anything. Carrie was 1,000% right. That game might be my game of this year. I loved it so much. It's like a 20-hour Indiana Jones movie, and I have not been able to stop talking about it to people. It's so freaking good. If you haven't picked that up yet, go pick it up. It's awesome. And the ending, Carrie, you were right. The ending was so satisfying.
So good. Yeah, so good.
So good.
That's all I want to say about Ark. Yeah, it as a mainline Indiana Jones story, it's up there. It's up there. It is so good.
It really is. Russ, you've been playing Final Fantasy Rebirth. How far into it are you?
About 8 hours now, which means what, 1%. So
it took me about 50 hours to beat.
Yeah, I'm not really doing side quests. They are really trying to hook you in with those. Be like, hey, you could help all these villagers out like you did in the last game. it's like, well, I didn't help them in the last game either. You know what I mean? Like, they really guilt me, but no, I've been sticking to the main storyline, and it's been okay. It is. I hate to say this, but I like the gameplay of Final Fantasy 16 more. Like it's not really hitting with me because it's this weird mix of like action and turn based, like I got to constantly think about my teammates and then like potioning and all that kind of stuff. And it's just a lot where I don't like having to press the A button and then everything stops and then I got to pick my things, whatever. It's just disruptive to me. I kind of like just spamming buttons and being like more like an action RPG.
So I will say, Russ, one thing that you could do is you can do shortcuts. So you pull a trigger and push a button and it doesn't pause the action. You just, you cast a spell by doing like left trigger square or something like that. Okay. And so you can play the game without doing pausing. What were you going to say, Carrie?
There's also someone told me when I first started playing to change the camera mode to free because it defaults to fixed. So it like kind of forces your angle, and when you do it to free mode, it like you can Prince of Persia: Sands of Time, Batman: Arkham Knight, the type of free flowing combat that you can like you hit where you're like looking at with the camera. That's more of like what it does when you change the camera angle instead of fixed to make it free. And I did that immediately. The first battle I got into, I was already digging it. I got to get into it, but honestly, I'm putting it aside for right now just because the Chuck E. Cheese stuff about it was just like really putting me off. And when I say Chuck E. Cheese, I mean the animatronics of the town folk of just like being on a loop, just doing their thing and just saying the same thing. And I was just like, it was just a weird whiplash for me. It's just weird. Anyway, I'm going to go, I already downloaded Avowed and I've been looking forward to this game for a long time. So I'm just going to jump straight into that. But I downloaded it today. I haven't actually started it yet, but that's the next game that I'm really actually looking forward to. That's the only thing that's like hot for me at the moment.
Yeah. So go ahead, Russ.
I was just say with Final Fantasy, like there are elements like the Chuck E. Cheese loop kind of thing. I kind of like some of that stuff because it feels like the PS1 game, but with a new skin on it. Like they're behaving like a 1999 game, and I kind of don't really mind that, But yeah, it's the combat has really just been like there's so much of it, and it's like when I try to dodge, like I'm always a little late. Like there's just like this weird timing that I got to get used to, and so I'm gonna give it some more time. I like that it's chapters, So I'm on chapter 4 right now out of 14, so I like know where I'm headed in terms of the story and stuff. So I do appreciate that, and you can honestly. You can kind of knock out one chapter every evening kind of thing. So it's like it seems to me like a 14-day game, which I think is pretty cool. So
yeah, I had a lot of fun with that game. It was my game of the year last year. As far as like doing all of the side quests, I did every single side quest in the first 2 zones. And then when I got to the 3rd zone, I was like, the story was starting to pull me along a little bit more. And I was like, okay, I don't care about these little side quests. I want to find out what's happening. And so I started to abandon all of the side quest stuff in favor of just, mainlining the story. Very, very fun game. I highly recommend it to anybody that likes, especially if you played the first remake. Rebirth takes everything about the first one and cranks it up to 11.
Yeah, it's Carrie, better.
I like it a lot more. Carrie, you brought up Avowed. The second I beat Indiana Jones, I installed Avowed, and I had to. Well, I finished it, and then I went to install Avowed, and it was like you have to wait, and I was like, oh, okay. So I did a live stream yesterday, and then I was like, okay, the stream's over. Can I install it now? And I installed it, and then last night I played it for 3 hours, and
nice.
I was very skeptical about Avowed. Very skeptical. Every time I saw gameplay, I thought the combat does not look weighty. I was dead wrong. The combat feels so freaking good in Avowed. Like you hold down, you attack with your triggers, right? And if you just pull the trigger, you'll do a quick attack. But if you hold it down, you like charge up your attack. And like I've been kind of bouncing back and forth between a dagger and a wand. and like having like a grimoire in my other hand, like a spell book. And like having the spell book in my hand, I pull in my left hand, I pull the trigger and it gives me 4 spells that I can cast. I get a fire spell, an ice spell, a shieldy spell, and another one that I can't think of. Those are really satisfying to use. They look fantastic. I've been playing it on my ROG Nook. But then when I use the dagger, like I'm doing like real quick attacks, but then when I hold it and charge it, like he's holding it for a second. And then as soon as, like, if you hold it the whole time, he'll charge forward and stab, and it feels really weighty. And you almost feel the hit when it hits the enemy, and it feels so much better than I thought it was going to. Also, the voice acting is top notch. Like,
really?
Yeah, there's a guy who he's, I don't know, he looks like a blue fish guy or whatever.
Right.
His name is Kai, Kai, and I love this guy's voice acting. Just the way that he's reading the lines makes me feel like, oh, this is how a real person would speak.
Right.
He's not just sitting there going,
forsooth.
Yeah, he's actually talking, and like the intonation in his voice sounds great. And there's this lady that I met in a cage, and she, like, her voice acting is awesome as well.
Nice.
But I'm having so much fun with it. Again, only 3 hours in, super early gameplay, because I only started playing it yesterday because I didn't have access to it until then. And in full disclosure, I did get a review copy for it, so I just want to make sure everybody knows about that.
Same for me.
I'm loving it. It's so good, and I cannot wait to get back to it.
I've been waiting for this for a while, and the they did like a longer teaser of Avowed, and honestly, I was looking at the dialogue, and I was like, I wasn't feeling the dialogue at all. It looked kind of weird, like in how they were doing it, and I was like, I'm probably want to detach from this. But there was one segment in the fighting thing where there was like an upper level and a lower level, and the guy like runs and jumps, and then did this thing where he like bounced off. And that's alone solidified me on the combat. And I was like, the combat's going to be great in this. I cannot wait for this. So that was like how I felt. So when you said the dialogue was good and like voice acting, I was like, oh, really? I didn't really like it when I first saw the teaser, but that's good to know. I've been waiting for this for a while. Like, I feel like Obsidian, I felt a little bit of it like in Outer Worlds, but it was just like a game that was done real fast. And when I heard that like Avowed, because Avowed, the teaser trailer was in 2020. So they've already working on this game for a bit. So this game is like almost 6 years, right? 5 years, 6 years of development. So it's a long period that Obsidian was working on this. So yeah, I've been looking forward to it since the beginning, because I was just like, okay, Skyrim, Obsidian, Oblivion like, but made by Obsidian. And, you know, even though the Obsidian team has changed, they still made Pillars of Eternity. They still did. And this is in the Pillars of Eternity world. So I was like, okay.
Oh, is it? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I was like, yes, I'm in. Like, so I've been waiting for this game since the teaser trailer. And it was far grittier in the original teaser trailer. Like, it was like super dark and, you know, brooding. And now it's like vibrant and colorful, which is fine. I don't care. It still looks great. But yeah, I've been looking forward to this for a while. So this is what I'm going to definitely play.
I like, so the thing about the dialogue trees, first off, when I say the voice acting is great, I've only met like 4 characters. So,
right.
It could be real bad later. Okay. But one thing that I did notice is, like, I ran into this guy out in the wilderness and I was talking to him, and he said something. It didn't really register to me at the time, because I was only kind of halfway paying attention. He said something, and then my character, the options that you have on the side was like, what do you mean by that? I don't believe you. It was one of the options. I was like, oh, you know what? The way that he did say that makes me think that I shouldn't believe him. And then I chose that. And then, like, the other guy that was like my companion guy was talking to me. He's like, yeah, hold on a sec. That doesn't make any sense what you're saying. I think you're lying to us right now. And it was just a very interesting conversation. And another thing that I really like about the dialogue tree is that anytime you want during the dialogue, you can press X. It will bring up a history of the conversation that you had.
Wow.
And it will also like define lore related things.
That's
so
cool.
You don't have to remember everything. Like, what the hell is a god like? I don't freaking know. I can hit X and it will tell me. Kind of like Russ, like in Final Fantasy 16,
16, yeah.
when they have that, whatever they call it, where you press down on the pad in the middle of your PlayStation and it comes up and says, this is defining all of these different terms so that you don't get lost in all the minutia.
Yeah, totally. And those change. The cool thing, the context changes in Final Fantasy 16 as well. So I'm assuming same with that game too. Is like, it'll reference a character, but then later in the game it'll reference that character, but also bring you up to speed at that moment too. So it's like they update that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I will say is I saw some people say that the game is very buggy, and people who have had way more like longer access than I have. They've said like it took them about 50 hours to beat the game, and they don't think it should have taken them 50 hours because they lost a lot of time due to like game save files and that kind of thing. So that's something to keep in mind. Hopefully that kind of thing gets patched, but right now I'm having a blast with it.
One thing that was confirmed to me is it does the same thing that Indiana Jones does. So if you play the Steam version, you can sync it up to Xbox achievements pop, save states transfer over to Xbox with the Steam version. So get Steam achievements, get Xbox achievements, save states, transfer over. So I'm going to be doing that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's like, I love that Microsoft is like doing this. Hopefully they just keep on doing this for every game going forward now. Because it's like, I mean, when I played it on PC, I was like, oh man, I wish I could, like, I was thinking about, I was like, oh man, I could play this game again later, but I don't really want to go through all this stuff again. I would like to have the achievements on Xbox. Then when I just pressed sync, it was just like bloop, 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 bloop. And I was like, oh man, that's awesome. The only thing is though, I wish that I did it, earlier, like on the initial, because my time stats did sync, but only after I had synced it. So all of my achievements popped. I got like most of them. And then it was like, you played Indiana Jones for an hour. And I'm like, no, played for way longer. Steam has the correct one, but Xbox doesn't.
So I ran into an issue so I had it originally because it's a Game Pass game, Indiana Jones, not Avowed. Although I think that's also a Game Pass game. But I had already played a little bit of Indiana Jones on my Xbox. And then, like I said last time, Carrie bought Indiana Jones for me for Christmas because we all exchanged games. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to play the Steam version then. Thanks, dude. And because I had a small save file on the Xbox, when I tried to do that syncing thing, I cannot get it to work. I logged in on the menu and it was like, yep, it's showing me my Xbox account. I said, go ahead and do the sync. And it's like, okay, it's sunk. It's all set. You're great. Go. Okay. Shut off my computer, turn on my Xbox, and I give it a shot. Just shows my original save file there. I'm like, okay, that's weird. Go back over to the PC. I can't see the Xbox save file. So I don't know what the hell I did wrong. I think that if you're going to use that Xbox thing, make sure that you have only played it on one platform before you do any syncing to the other platform. Don't do it on both, because you might end up screwing yourself. And I was really worried when I uploaded. I was like, oh man, I hope I'm not going to screw something up and delete my long
from
save.
The beginning again. I guess I won't play this game ever again.
Yeah, because that's the thing is, like, my vision is that, like, for Avowed, for example, it's on Game Pass, so I'm going to put it on my Xbox. I'm going to play it for a bit, and if it really starts to sink its teeth into me, I'm going to get it on Steam. Probably wait for one of those sales, and then I want to sync my, I can just resume what I'm doing. I've done the same thing on like PlayStation, but I just can't sync, right? And so it's like I start a game on my PS5, I'm like, this is great, but I don't really do the couch thing anymore, And so, so that's one of those things where I've been recently just like thinking, yeah, the Xbox way is just the right way to go compared to Sony.
For the audio listeners who are wondering what we're giggling about, there's a little mini fox that was back behind Carrie for a second there. All right, let's move on and talk about more news stuff. Unless, Carrie, do you have any gameplay that you wanted to talk about, or are we ready to move on?
No, nothing specific. I'm looking forward to just playing it. I do have to like figure out my game time right now, especially to get back into Rebirth as well.
Yeah. But real quick, last episode we did this thing where our 2025 hype list. We're not doing that at this episode because Rich isn't here. We want to make sure all four of us are on the show to talk about that. Russ, there's an emulator that just got yoinked off the Android store, and I think that there's a lot of people that are panicking because Nintendo is quite litigious, and we've seen this happen in the past. But you were like, this is okay.
Yeah, it's Drastic, which is the Nintendo DS emulator. So back in our time machine about a year ago, when Yuzu was taken down and the whole Citra thing and all that kind of stuff, the developer of Drastic, who really hasn't done a lot of updates for that app in years, basically said, all right, I'm making my app free, because he got freaked out about the fact that he's collecting money for this emulator. So he said, I'm going to make it free from now on, and I'm going to take it down at some point. And so he made it free from then on, and it's just been on the Play Store ever since. And then as of yesterday, it's no longer on the Play Store. And so I don't think anything nefarious is happening. I think he just kind of made good on his, not promise, but, just what he had made a statement about a year ago. So it's fine. It's an old app. It's been around for like 10 years, and it's been basically feature complete. It's not a huge loss other than the fact that you're just going to have to Google Drastic APK and then to download it, which is available everywhere, and there are other emulator apps out there too that some are still getting worked on, like Melon DS and stuff. And so not a huge loss for me. Just is less convenient now that I have to find, I'll probably just put an APK of it on my Google Drive and grab it from there, like I do with some other apps and stuff. So not a huge deal. And RetroArch has its own cores as well. It doesn't have a Drastic core, but it's got the Melon DS core and DES Mume or whatever they call that one as well. There's a couple that'll work depending on how powerful your system is. So if this was, I don't see this as at the level of Yuzu or whatever, holy crap, how am I going to now play these games on my device? It's not there, but it's just less convenient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exophase was the main developer for Joystick. Yeah. And it was funny because in 2008, this device right here, I've been meaning to do more of it. I don't know if you guys can see it right there. The Open Pandora.
I've never heard of this.
So this is from 2008.
Old school.
Yeah, super old. Yeah, super old.
The keyboard looks terrible.
It's actually not bad. The analog sticks are atrocious. They're outrageously terrible. They're feel like rubber bands. It's awful. The D-pad is actually pretty good. It's made by Dave C. Anyway, he was on the GB32X forum, and there's a few of them. So there's RE64, who made the ARM Dynarec for N64 emulation. Specifically, it was going to be one of the big things so that N64 emulation could work on the Open Pandora, because this has the ARM Cortex A8. So the first really good ARM core that came out. So that was the big claim to fame there. It had the PowerVR GPU. So it was a really good device, and it was $300. It took 3 years to make. It was a whole thing. In any event, Exophase was always talking about it, and the funny stuff was there's a term called painting the bike shed, where if people are there's here's our nuclear reactor. Does anyone have any feedback? And no one has any feedback because they don't know nothing about nuclear reactors. But then it's okay, we have the bike shed outside of the nuclear reactor. What color should it be? And then all of a sudden, everyone has an opinion on what is the correct color for the bike shed, and it delays a lot of different things because there's a bureaucracy about the color of the bike shed. And that came up because people were when you only have a single screen, what you have to do is you have to do one screen like this and one screen like that. and he's like, guys, that's not the problem. It's making the emulator first. That's the problem. I got to make this work, and then we can worry about how we can fit two screens on a single screen. That's why you always have so many different options. You have the big screen with a tiny little one as a joke. But that all stems back from the 2008 forums on GP32X of painting the bike shed of DS emulation talk, where no one was offering anything of a value of you want to emulate DS. Well, what you have to do is this, and here's some assembly code. And everyone's what you have to do is make sure two screens fit on one.
Honestly, I think the best way to emulate DS games is to go buy a Nintendo 3DS and just jailbreak it. And I have zero guilt about saying to do that, because Nintendo shut down the servers, so you can't get games for the 3DS or the DS anymore. And there's a lot of games that you can't get because they never had physical versions. So it's perfectly fine to jailbreak a 3DS and install a bunch of old DS games on there.
I'm in agreement, especially if you own them, right? If you bought them.
Yeah, if you bought them.
Yeah, but there was a person on Twitter that was super aggressive towards me. He was like, how'd you play
Wait,
those?
On Twitter? You're kidding.
And I showed a picture of all the Switch games that I own, and he's like, yeah, but how did you get those? Where'd you get those? How'd you download them? Did you download them yourself? And even if you did, you don't own them. And I was like I showed him all of my pictures of every game I own, and he said I don't own them. And I was like, wow, this guy he's like in the realm of like the terms of service and all that other crap of like how Nintendo is like trying to align this. But I bought those games and I own those games, and we can go through all the legalese of whatever they're trying to say. Like I have a license to, when I put it in there, that whatever. I don't care. I bought them. I own them. I could light them on fire if I wanted to, and no one can tell me otherwise because I
agree with you, but you don't own them. I still say you can do whatever you want.
Right.
But we don't own them. And
we check out my nice license Nintendo Switch collection.
Yes.
Yeah. It's this license. Yeah, but like he was like aggressive, like I am like an active thief by emulating. Even if I bought them, that doesn't matter. That was his sphere of where this was going. Like the only way that was applicable of actually doing it the correct way was buying it and then inserting it into a Switch. And that is the only valid way. And I was like, all right. I've
had people get really mad at me because I say if you are downloading Switch games that you didn't pay for, you're a thief. But if you paid for them and you download them, I have no problem with that. You are not a thief. You paid for it and you just didn't feel like doing the ripping yourself. That is... Like that is a legal argument, not a moral argument. And I feel like people get too caught up on the legal argument. But
this is very much where a lot of people get into the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law.
Yes. And I think it's perfectly reasonable for Kerry to go on to the internet and he's got this wall of red Switch cases and he can download those. And he doesn't have, I don't think that there's any reason for him to have a MIG Switch dumper and dump those himself. Because he has the cartridges that he paid for. He's not doing anything immoral by downloading a game as long as he paid for it. I don't do that because I don't want to go through the hassle of trying to find the right files. So I just play the games that I bought.
Yeah, I'm in the same vein. I always, my moral compass is what is going to give the people who created this game the most money. Like, how can I get the developers, the people who worked on it, the money? And that's the route I go. And then, just kind of work everything out from there. I love doing the whole MIG Switch thing for me personally because it's just neat. Like, I get so much thrill out of it. Like, I'm not only playing Super Mario Wonder or whatever. I'm playing my Super Mario Wonder now on this thing. There's no difference in the code or any of that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I always get a little thrill out of that.
And I would probably do that if I had a physical collection of Switch games, but I don't. All of my, I probably own 7 physical Switch games and the rest I bought digitally because I prefer the convenience of digital. Although, our conversation earlier about physical versus digital, I feel a little bit guilty about all of the digital games that I've purchased instead of physical games because that made Sony feel like, well, people don't really, I mean, they've said way more people are playing digital games than physical. And I'm that gives them the ammunition to take away the physical. And so I feel guilt about that.
It was going to happen. Dude, it was going to happen regardless of anything. It's cheaper for them to do it. They don't have any of the logistics. They don't have to share in the revenue with any of the big box people.
Yeah.
They get to take all of it, spend less on distributing it. And it's just a win-win-win for them. Yeah. There's literally no. That's the other thing, right? Now that digital exists and it's harder to do a refund, the whole, even just refund, you can't resell your digital license of anything, right?
Right.
So the whole idea of the old 2000s mindset, right? The late 90s mindset of developers of we have to make this game 200 hours long because we don't want them reselling the game within 20 hours because then that's going to steal money from us. And that no longer applies at all. And you still find some games that are padded with just filler content. And it's like, I don't need this. Just please make it an 8-hour game. You just make it 8 hours. I paid for it. I can't, if you bought a physical version, obviously you can resell it. But as we get closer and closer to only digital releases, I hope that the notion of filler just escapes every developer's mindset. And it's like, we don't have to worry about that anymore.
It won't, because they want to be able to put on the store that it's
I hate that.
800 hours of content.
Who wants, like, there's like,
There are people that want that, Carrie. I mean, I don't, but there's tons of people that do.
I don't. Astrobot, I wanted to be 2 hours shorter. Like, I still immensely enjoyed Astrobot, but it wore out its welcome. And I was just like, okay, let me just finish this up. Let me just polish this up so I can get a platinum on this. But it didn't need to go on as long as it did.
Let me just real quick get a platinum on this super hard game with those super hard levels. Yeah, let me just go ahead and knock that out. I've been stuck in the square levels for I don't know how long. Jerk.
Oh, really? Oh, I'm sorry. No, it was no.
I'm just not good at video games. It's okay.
I did the whole square level in one try.
See?
Just
Oh my
kidding.
gosh.
I'm just kidding.
Gosh.
I don't remember. I died 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Man.
I don't know, but you get my point. Is like, if there's like challenge levels, fine. But if it's just like, here's another level and you're just reusing the same type of
mechanic.
The mechanic. Now, I love that. I love that so much. And it's something that It Takes Two does. And it's like, okay, you're on this level, but these are your special powers. And then you use them. And it's the same thing that, like, Miyamoto is, like, famous for. He doesn't wear out the welcome. He gives you the initial thing. You have a firepower, and then you can use it, but then you can use it in a different way that you weren't thinking about. And that's like, the three things, the rule of three that Miyamoto made. And that whole process of like, here's this new thing you have. Here's how you use it. But did you think about using it this way? And that's like the whole like, oh, that was great. Now let me go to the next one. But when you start reintroducing the same thing on different levels, it's like, okay, guys, you're padding stuff now, and like just start subtracting. You've gone too far.
I would say for me, Astrobot didn't feel any padding. I had an absolute blast with it. But I can understand why somebody would say, I already did the level with the bulldog that can jet through glass and stuff. I don't want to do that again.
If there was a valid twist that I had not experienced yet, okay. But I felt like I was just kind of in a different level, kind of rinse and repeating what I was already doing before. And I didn't feel like there was like only a few times where like the gloves, right? The glove thing that you would use to bash stuff, but then sometimes you can grab onto two separate things and pull them back. And that I loved. I love that twist. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And you can do that. And they did do that in a few different levels. And I was like, okay, no problem. But then there's like certain things where it's like, okay, well, I know what I'm supposed to do here. So I'll just, that's my only problem with the thing. And I think as I was playing through it, it definitely could have been shaved down just a little bit. Now, it wasn't filled with filler, but there was a bit of it. But that's just like, a small nitpick for the game otherwise, because it was fantastic.
Yeah.
In the show notes, I want you guys to click on the state of play, because Sony just had a state of play yesterday or the day before. I think it was the day before.
Yeah.
And
before, yeah.
I just want to scroll through real quick, and let's talk about, like, Russ, pick one game that you either saw in the state of play, or if you didn't see the state of play, you scroll through and you're like, oh, I'm excited about that game. Any that jump out at you, Russ?
I haven't watched any of these, but I want to watch the trailer for Saros, which I guess is not gameplay. It's just, cinematic or whatever. But that's the folks that made Returnal.
Yep.
And so, which I've been testing a lot lately because of the device I've been working on for a review next week. And like that game feels good. And so I am interested in seeing something else from them. And so I am looking forward to that one, but I don't really know anything about it other than I'm just happy that they're working on something else, basically.
Carrie, what about you? Anything jumping out at you?
That is my pick. Saros is my pick.
Okay.
That is clearly because everything else that was there, like Days Gone remastered, we have another remaster, and then there's like every other game that was available on every other thing. Saros, I'm like hoping that we get a PC release fast, at least faster than Returnal did. Maybe it's just 12 months, but I'm going to wait again to be a PC release. But it's basically like Returnal, but then they also have not as punishing when you die. So it's more Hades-like that I heard. So it's like, just more of that more roguelike stuff, but Hades-like in that you're building up something back in the foundation and then going back out. And their tech is great. Their GPU tech is like their engine itself. I am a big fan of. Really pushes GPUs hard. So So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. I find it weird that they wouldn't just make, I don't know. It's like Returnal 2 could have happened, but then again, okay, fine, make it a new IP, even if it's basically the same engine and same type of thing that they're doing, and there's pivoting with an addition on top of that. I'm totally fine with that. It's fine if it's a new IP. Hopefully this one takes off rather than Returnal. But yeah, that's for sure my pick.
It's
So
fun.
I have a couple.
It's a lost
Go ahead,
opportunity.
Russ.
I was going to say it's a lost opportunity to make the sequel called Returnal. It's sitting right there in front of them.
That's
It
funny.
is.
So I had two that are obvious. Monster Hunter Wilds. I haven't shut up about this game for a year. I'm very excited for it. I applied for the beta, didn't get in. I don't even want to talk about that one today, though. Also, Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater comes out August 28th. I'm
awesome.
hyped for it. I cannot wait. I don't want to talk about that one either.
That's so
the
much
one that I
sooner
want
than
to
I
talk
thought, too.
about. Say that again, Russ.
I was going to say it's so much sooner than I thought. I thought it was
Yeah.
going to come out to like next year or something. So I'm super happy that it's got a release date.
Absolutely. And in the middle, at the end of summer, very excited. The game that I was most excited to see at the PlayStation State of Play is the new Shinobi game.
Right.
Also comes out the day after Metal Gear Solid, by the way, August 29th. And it's made by the same people who made Streets of Rage 4. And if you have not played Streets of Rage 4, that game is incredibly good.
It is.
And everything that I saw from Shinobi was giving me, oh man, makes me want to play Shinobi 3 again. I'm so excited for this. It's a 2D side-scrolling beat 'em up using the same art style from Lizard Cube, and I think Dotemu is the publisher of Streets of Rage 4, so I think they might be publishing this as well. I cannot wait for this game. Super excited. Carrie, are you interested in Shinobi Act of Vengeance? Art of Vengeance?
There's a few parts of it that like totally like I was like feeling it. Like he goes up and he bounces off and then throws like 3 shurikens down, and then there's this other one where he's doing his like special move and there's like this flame that builds around him, and yeah, there's like parts of it that like look and feel amazing. But did you just call it Dotemu and not .mu?
I don't know how to say it.
Oh, yeah.
Listen,
I don't know what it
what
is.
was the thing where Rich was picking on us a couple weeks ago? Ninja Gaiden?
Ninja Gaiden. Yeah, I say Gaiden. I still say
Right.
Gaiden.
I
You,
can't- yeah,
you
Gaiden.
also say Miyamoto for some reason. I never heard anybody say that.
Miyamoto. Yeah,
Also-
Miyamoto.
Also, what's the name of the Nier game? What did you call it?
Nier Automata.
Yeah. Nier Automata.
Automata. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
Automata.
Yeah,
It's like a
they're
car
just
racing
words.
game.
Yeah.
Carrie's from New York City. He
Love
says
it.
things
Yeah, what-
weird.
what did someone
he
say
says
to me?
Mario.
Yeah. I had someone that was near me.
I mean, he says it in Nintendo
It's-a me.
64. It's
Mario.
me, Mario.
I
You
said
know?
Mario. Yeah, I don't know. I don't
well,
know. It's
that's
always
okay.
been Mario. It's always been Mario's.
Before he could talk.
That was his first word. And his parents were like, I can't believe you said Mario.
Yeah, Mario. I don't know. I know me and Bob say it, but so I don't know.
Right.
It's just that's
It's a New
always
York
been
thing.
it. Yeah, I don't know. It's what else? Yeah, Ryu. I know. I pronounce that one incorrectly, and I don't think I'll ever pronounce it correctly. I just say
The thing about all this stuff, though, as a former linguist, all that matters is communication. Are you getting the word across, and is it understood? To me, that's all I really care about, and so I don't really mind any of that stuff.
Yeah,
That's right.
So like it's funny because like I do say automaton to talk about them, but I never pieced that together. There's another one that I've done like that where the guy's name. So he's on the Discord, super brilliant guy. His name is it's Cipray, and I did not bifurcate it.
Cifre?
That's what I said at first, but it's cipher.
What?
Yeah, Cypher.
Cipher, like a cipher. So Cipher is Cipher, and his nickname, his avatar name is Cipher. And I called him Cifre, like out loud, and he was like, "It's not." He's like, laugh out loud. He called me Cifre. And I was like, "Wait a minute,
You
and then,
stupid bastard.
yeah." And then I was like, "Oh, Cipher!" Like it, but it was like I just read it and didn't like separate what the meaning of it was. So I didn't. I was just reading it, and that's how. Just like you, it was like Cifre, and the cipher part of it was like, of course. So like when I say automaton, that is how I say it. I wouldn't say automaton, but I would say automata instead of. I can't even say it.
Automata.
Automata. Yeah, like it breaks my brain a little. Like I could say automaton no problem, but automata is like I have to like break it up in my brain. It's weird. It's weird. Mario.
Stop making up words, developers. Use actual words so that we know how to say them, and that way we don't sound stupid on the podcast.
I say water. I say coffee. I say
Automata. It's car. It sounds like a car racing game to me when you say it like
near that. Automata.
There's where I live. There's a lot of people that say toilet instead of toilet, and it drives me up the wall.
That one would get me.
It's just accents. Just people have different accents. It's fine. But hey. We really went off the deep end at the end here. Carrie only has 1 minute left before he's got to go. So, Carrie, tell people which videos you're working on.
So I just finished up the Gillikit Hall-based analog stick for the Ally X, and it is impressive, but in no means do you ever get it, especially because the calibration utility could fix any drift that you had even on the original sticks, but they are better. So it becomes like a premium upgrade thing. The only video that I'm working on now, and I'm trying to sprint through it, is the Strix Halo tablet. So trying to burst through that.
What about you, Russ? What I saw you put out a video this morning.
Yeah, I did a video this morning about like my favorite handheld combinations. Like, so if you are going to have two handhelds, what are the two that I would recommend? If you're going to have three, like what do I recommend in what categories kind of thing? So that was fun to put together, just kind of like a talking head thing. And then I'm also working on that same ROG tablet review, which is going to be coming out early the next week. And so that's taken up a lot of time, a lot of benchmarks and stuff. Really exciting. But I want to have a video out before then, so I might do like a controller review.
Nice. Very cool. Well, go and follow these guys over at youtube.com/thefox or youtube.com/retrogamecore. And before you get out of here, make sure that you subscribe. And thank you so much for watching the podcast. And we will see you next week. And maybe we will pick up where we left off with our games 2025 game hype tier list if we can get all four of us together. But stay rad, everybody.